Today we're going to continue our three-act story about Microsoft's attempt to break out of computer software in the early 2000s. And today's story starts with a failure, but one that resulted in a huge success thanks to some really savvy marketing. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. So as long as there have been computers, there have been video games, but there's also been a divide between the people who play video games in arcades, on handheld devices and home consoles, and the people who play video games on their home computer. Microsoft has always been a software company, but it was never really that interested in publishing video games until the mid-1990s, when they launched a product called Windows 95. The big idea of Windows 95 was that it was an operating system that could turn a home computer from an intimidating machine into a user-friendly, all-in-one multimedia device. And because people mainly thought solitaire when they thought about Windows games, Microsoft even created a games division to make brand new games for Windows using software called DirectX. Around the same time, in 1995, Sony launched its PlayStation video game console worldwide, and it was a huge success, featuring the same multimedia capabilities that home computers at the time had, but in a much cheaper and easier to use device that could be hooked up to the TV in someone's living room. Sony started talking about its next generation PlayStation, fittingly named the PlayStation 2, and said it was going to take things one step further by including a DVD drive and allowing people to listen to audio CDs or watch DVDs without having to buy a dedicated player. Sony even repositioned the PlayStation 2 not as a games console, but a home computer system that could serve as a home entertainment system, eventually expandable to house a hard drive and a network adapter so it could be connected to the internet. This bugged Microsoft because one of their deepest desires was to create a computer that lived in the living room instead of on a desktop. In 1996, they formed a partnership with NBC News to create a cable channel called MSNBC that was connected to their online portal, the Microsoft Network, better known as MSN. In 1997, they bought a company called Web TV and eventually repositioned it as MSN TV. But having Web TV gave Microsoft a foothold in creating television consumer products. And so, when a group of DirectX engineers started envisioning how Microsoft could compete with the PlayStation 2, they came up with a video game console that would be able to do many of the same things but run on proprietary Microsoft software. This project morphed into the Xbox, and it launched in November of 2001, a year after the PlayStation 2 but alongside the launch of Nintendo's GameCube. And you know, the Xbox was a modest success in terms of sales. It eventually sold around 24 million units worldwide and established solid console gaming brand for Microsoft. Microsoft even outsold Nintendo, which is probably still the most visible brand in video games. But the PlayStation 2, it sold 160 million units worldwide, and it was so profitable for Sony that it became their most important electronics division. Microsoft, on the other hand, lost around $4 billion on the Xbox due to costs associated with production and marketing. And you know, to most companies, losing $4 billion would be considered a major failure. Even worse for Microsoft, too, the upcoming PlayStation 3 was on the way, promising to be a powerful game console running on custom high-end hardware, as well as a media hub for all sorts of devices, including digital music players, digital cameras, the new PlayStation Portable handheld device, and the new Blu-ray discs that Sony was pushing as the next big format for digital video. Microsoft's engineers knew the second generation of the Xbox would be their last if they couldn't beat Sony at its own game, and they immediately started work on an Xbox 2 called Project Xenon that could go toe-to-toe with the PlayStation 3. But since they didn't want to make it sound like they were one generation behind Sony, their marketing team came up with a smart new name, the Xbox 360. The marketing team started talking up the Xbox 360, but they had an uphill battle to fight because it was clear the Xbox 360 wouldn't be as powerful as the PlayStation 3 and wouldn't be able to utilize Blu-ray discs or provide the highest quality high-definition output. But raw power is rarely the reason people buy video game consoles. They're much more concerned about the games themselves. So, the marketing team started hammering 3 reasons why people would want to own an Xbox 360. First, it would be built to interact with Microsoft's online gaming service, Xbox Live. Sony didn't have anything like that yet, but Microsoft had been running Xbox Live for years on the original Xbox. That was a big plus. Second, Microsoft had lined up some really promising games that would only be available on the Xbox 360. The Xbox already had the popular Halo games, and the Xbox 360 could not only continue to play them by being backwards compatible with some of the original Xbox games, but they would also feature brand new sequels starting with Halo 3 a couple years later. They also had acquired one of Nintendo's greatest partners, Rare, to develop some early titles for the Xbox 360, and they were partnering with Epic Games to release a new cover-based shooter called Gears of War. Third, and this is the most important thing of all, Microsoft planned to be the first mover this time, releasing the Xbox 360 worldwide in the holiday season of 2005. Sony was planning a launch in 2006 for the PlayStation 3, starting first with their home country of Japan and then targeting the fall for North America and Europe. This meant the Xbox 360 would have as much as a year's head start in most of the world. But it didn't come cheap. The Xbox 360 was so rushed from design to production, Microsoft only had about 2.5 months to get units on shelves in time for launch day. This meant that there were not only major product shortages, but also huge problems with scalpers buying up inventory. At one point during the holiday season of 2005, there were around 40,000 Xbox 360s being flipped on eBay. There were also issues with quality control. The original Xbox 360 units tended to run hot, damaging the internal components and creating a problem commonly called the red ring of death because of the way the lights on the console would display the error state. It was hard to replace those initial units because they were in short supply. Even so, the Xbox 360 went on to be a huge success, by far the best-selling Xbox and a true competitor to the PlayStation 3 in every market except Japan. It wound up selling 84 million units worldwide. And remember how I told you the Xbox 360 was less powerful than the PlayStation 3? That actually turned out to be a good thing because the PlayStation 3's fancy proprietary processor was far more difficult to write games for. And so game developers would first create games for the Xbox 360 and then convert them over to the PlayStation 3. For many of the most popular games, this meant that the Xbox 360 version was actually the better one. And one of the most popular series on the Xbox 360 was Activision's Call of Duty, which was also available on the PlayStation 3, but which had far fewer players. It also didn't hurt that the best version of the Xbox 360 only cost $400 at retail, while the PlayStation 3's cheapest version was $500, and its premium version was $600 due to all those extra media center features that, it turned out, most gamers didn't even want or need. And the marketing team for the Xbox 360 deserves a lot of the credit because they did an outstanding job of highlighting what made their device special and desirable so that their platform was viewed as the one you wanted to own. The marketing team also understood that video games were not just a product. They were a lifestyle. And so the Xbox 360 software was built to reward that lifestyle by offering players trophies for the achievements they made in games, by giving them online profiles where other players could see their gamer score, and by allowing players to take their profiles with them to use on other Xbox 360s so that anytime they were playing, they were building up their stats. Microsoft's marketing team was also very savvy about how they unveiled the device and got people excited about it. While traditionally game consoles were shown to the press before they were shown to consumers, Microsoft's marketing team focused on consumers instead. The product was unveiled about 6 months before the Xbox 360's launch on a pre-taped MTV special Microsoft sponsored. It was hosted by actor Elijah Wood. For the first time in video game history, everyone was learning about the Xbox 360 at the same time, instead of reading about it in video game magazines or on gaming websites. Microsoft also developed several viral marketing campaigns using a medium called alternate reality games. The first was called Our Colony, and allowed those who played to see bits and pieces of the console and screenshots from some of the games in development. Another campaign, called OriginXbox360.com, offered competitions hosted by 2 talking rabbits. And a later campaign, called Hex168, offered players the chance to read mysterious messages and to try to find clues about the Xbox 360, as well as to enter a sweepstakes to win one of 360 video game consoles being given away. All 3 of these games showed a remarkable understanding of how gamers were constantly searching for new information about upcoming video games and consoles, about how engaged they were by storytelling, and how they were willing to sift for clues and roleplay. Another very savvy move Microsoft made was to offer 2 varieties of the console. One of them was just the basic console itself for just $300, and the other $400 model included an optional, but eventually very necessary, removable hard drive. Players who wanted to buy the console and upgrade it later were able to purchase the cheaper console, but those who wanted the full experience were able to get the more fully featured one. And again, this showed a strong understanding of the gaming audience of the day. $400 seemed like a lot of money to ask for a video game console then, but $300 was the same price you'd pay for the original Xbox or the PlayStation 2 when they had come out. It made the console seem affordable to those who had to have the latest and greatest but who didn't want to spend top dollar on it. This strategy worked so well, the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 5 and later Xbox consoles also adopted it. So the Xbox 360 had a great run, but unfortunately, as we're going to explore in our next episode and the final part of our trilogy, that momentum also wouldn't last with the next Xbox. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and thanks for listening to the Marketing Gateway. See you next time. Today's plug is for fun, and how appropriate that I'm talking about fun when we're talking about video games, right? But you know, maybe video games aren't what you consider fun. Maybe you like books or movies or going out with friends or going out on hikes or, I don't know, skydiving over the middle of nowhere with a GoPro strapped to your head. Whatever you think of as fun, so long as it's legal, I want to encourage you to do it this week for a couple of reasons. One is that there are a lot of reasons not to have fun right now. It's a busy time of year, and it's hard sometimes to put down your list of things that need to be done and just enjoy yourself. I get it. But the other is that if you don't take some time for some fun now, you might get into the habit of preventing yourself from having fun regularly, and that's no fun at all. Literally, cutting fun out of your life is like deciding you're going to subsist entirely on plain water and raw vegetables. And listen, I'm a vegetarian, and I'm telling you, that's no way to live. You've got to allow some time for those indulgences that make you smile. And there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of fun sometimes. So take the time to do something you enjoy this week. Don't let anyone else tell you that you're too busy. I promise that you'll be glad that you did.